Brutal, the UCO seized from the PSOE fixer Leire an agenda where she wrote down all the targets of Pedro Sánchez's dirty tricks. We have the agenda. Let's begin. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Precautionary Measures. The news is on fire. That's how intense it is, so today we're going to have a special edition of Precautionary Measures. So you can know all the information that's coming out related to the case file of Pedro Sánchez's sewers. Within the framework of the CEPI plot being investigated by the National Court Judge, Santiago Pedraz. And pay attention because we have the agenda that the UCO, the Central Operative Unit of the Civil Guard, seized from the PSOE's fixer. Law of 10, where she wrote down all the judicial targets, but also the personal targets of the sewer, not just of the PSOE, but of Pedro Sánchez's sewer. We'll display this info on screen as usual. Also, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel. We've already surpassed it. The 132,000 subscribers were on our way to 150,000. And here we already have this information, the Blue Notebook of Law of 10. The UCO seized his notes with all the targets of the PSOE's Dirty Tricks operation. It's incredible what's in that agenda, in that Blue Notebook of Law of 10. Just to elaborate, here you have Leire 10, this is a fragment of that notebook, but we have the whole agenda and we're going to talk about some of those pages. The Central Operational Unit of the Civil Guard seized the notebook from the socialist fixer Leire 10, where she wrote down all the judicial targets of the PSOE's dirty operations. All these notes, handwritten notes and annotations by the fixer are already being investigated and analyzed by the UCO as part of the case. CEPI Pica is being investigated by the head of the Central Investigative Court No. 5 of the National Court, Santiago Pedraz. Precisely this Wednesday, the judge requested the transfer of the investigation into the PSOE's dirty dealings, which was being carried out by the head of Investigative Court No. 9 in Madrid, Arturo Zamariego. I already told you that the PSOE's dirty dealings are being investigated by Judge Zamariego in the Madrid Investigative Court and by Santiago Pedraz in the National Court. And of course, Pedraz already said yesterday, listen, Judge Zamariego, send me the whole investigation and I'll take care of everything, because it doesn't make sense for the same thing to be investigated in two courts. On Precautionary Measures with Miguel Ángel Pérez, we've had access to the PSOE fixer's notebook. It's a blue notebook, campus brand, and throughout almost 100 pages, Leire Díez explains all the judicial objectives of the socialist underworld with different notes, diagrams, or summaries. Leire Díez 10. To begin with, it mentions a meeting, a mysterious meeting that took place on November 24, 2021. The socialists attended this meeting. Elena Valenciano, Gaspar Sarrias, Juanma González Mejías. Atención, he is a consultant and nephew of Felipe González, the businessman Javier Pérez Dolcet, and herself. That is written down in Leire 10's notebook. On one hand, personal targets are set, like the Supreme Court Judge, Manuel Marchena, and the retired National Court Judge, Manuel García Castellón. The Chief Anti-Corruption Prosecutor, Alejandro Luzón, the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor, José Grinda, or the Supreme Court Prosecutor who investigated October 1st, the coup of October 1st, Consuelo Madrigal. Among the targets listed by Leire 10 are also the Lieutenant Colonel of the UCO, Antonio Balas, the former UCO captain, Juan Vicente Bonilla, or the commanders of the Civil Guard, Daniel Baena or Diego Pérez de los Cobos. One of the most frequently mentioned names in that notebook is the businessman involved in the scheme, Koldo Víctor Daldama, as well as his lawyer, José Antonio Choclán. There is also mention of the businessman Claudio Rivas, who is one of the main defendants in the hydrocarbon scheme. Or the businesswoman Carmen Pano, who claimed to have delivered 2 bags of money at the PSOE headquarters on Ferraz Street, totaling 90,000 euros. And here you have the image of Leire 10's blue notebook. If you look closely, a photo was taken of the UCO and it says campus, and here you can see how something was written on top of it on the cover of the notebook. And you can see how the pen, there's a pen mark, right? With different notes, because now they've written not only on the pages but also on top of this, on the cover of the notebook as well, right? And look, here we have some of the notes. For example, background, November 24, 2021. And it says, Leire 10, there's a meeting with Elena Valenciano, Gaspar Zarias, Juanma González Mejías, who must be Felipe González's nephew, Javier Pérez. All said and dolce, 10 okay. Antonio Hernando was supposed to be there. Well, this is one of the notes, but there are more here. Here we can also read, here the name Grinda appears, here it says Zepi. Different notes here, for example, at the bottom you can clearly read Marchena Luis in parentheses. And this would be Luis Sánchez de Tejada, that judge expelled from the judiciary, who was part of the dirty political underbelly, meaning that this man wanted to do something with the Supreme Court judge, Manuel Marchena. Here we can also read complaint against Choclan, referring to the lawyer of Victor Daldama. Here we can also see Bonilla, who was that captain of the UCO, and Leire 10 is totally obsessed with him. Villarejo, someone should call the anti-corruption prosecutor's office. We can also read, these are some of those notes. Let's continue, there are more here. Duro Felguera, as a prelude to what might happen next. Sandro referring to Sandro Rosell. Nervis Villalobos, a Venezuelan who is being investigated for various scandals in the PDVSA case. And here, if you look to the right, it already says Marchena Luis Sánchez de Tejada, meaning that is being taken care of. This expelled former judge, Luis Sánchez de Tejada, was plotting something against Marchena. Here you can also read Luzon and Grinda, referring to the chief anti-corruption prosecutor Alejandro Luzon and the anti-corruption prosecutor Jose Grinda. And look here, you can also see Consuelo Madrigal. Consuelo Madrigal is one of the prosecutors who investigated the October 1st coup. The PSOE's fixer also makes references to the partner of the Madrid president Isabel Díaz Ayuso, Alberto González Amador, and to the ex-partner of the former Vox deputy Macarena Olona. Leire Díez also mentions Commissioner José Manuel Villarejo, the former head of internal affairs of the police, Marcelino Martín Blas, and the former Minister of the Interior from the PP, Juan Ignacio Zoido. Leire Díez also makes numerous references to ongoing legal cases, such as the Coldo case, the hydrocarbons case, and the Pegasus case, which we recall had to be closed by Judge Calama. The notebook also includes notes about Atención Venezuela, the Venezuelan state company PDVSA, and the judicial investigation into the visit of Nicolás Maduro's former number 2 to Spain, Delcy Rodríguez, which was eventually closed. She also makes extensive notes about the former head of intelligence services under Hugo Chávez, Hugo El Pollo Carvajal, and Leire Díez also recalls that Carvajal provided information about PSOE and Podemos before being extradited to the United States. She also mentions Nervis Villalobos on numerous occasions, who was the Deputy Minister of Electric Energy during Chávez's government and is under investigation in numerous PDVSA scandals. The fixer also refers to the former president of Barça, Sandro Rosell, the businessman involved in the Punica case, David Marjalisa, and makes comments about other judicial investigations such as the BPA case or the CED case. She also doesn't forget about the National Intelligence Center, CNI, nor about the judge of the National Court, Santiago Pedraz, who is precisely the one currently investigating this case. Let's continue, because there are also notes about companies related to the hydrocarbon sector and mentions of some of them, such as Repsol, Duro Felguera, or Acciona. Especially striking are some diagrams about cryptocurrency and oil businesses and operations where countries like Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Spain are mentioned. And here you have this sketch made by Leire Díez. Up here on the left you can read crypto, then down here third countries, then here it says supply, purchase, payment, crypto, Venezuela, to the right ship below Dominican Republic, refining. And then on the left, Spain and Mexico. These are some of the notes included in Leire Díez's notebook. And just to remind you, Leire Díez, the former CEPI president, Vicente Fernández, and businessman Anshon Alonso, partner of Santos Cerdán, were arrested last December as part of the CEPI scheme. After testifying before the duty judge, they were released with precautionary measures. After the State Attorney General, Teresa Peramato, ordered that no request for pre-trial detention be made for them, with the aim of protecting Pedro Sánchez's government and the Socialist Party. That's the current situation in Spain. The Civil Guard Central Operations Unit is putting Sanchismo and Pedro Sánchez's corruption against the ropes. This very Thursday, UCO agents searched SEPI and the company Tubos Reunidos, which was a company mentioned in the case file for this corruption scheme. The operation is still ongoing, and this adds to all the information we are learning after investigating and scrutinizing the case file on the SEPI scheme. What can be confirmed is that Pedro Sánchez's corruption, Pedro Sánchez's dirty dealings, turned the state itself into a cesspool, penetrating its institutions and even using some civil guard officers so that the following would not be investigated: the Prime Minister's inner circle, his brother, his wife, his party, and his government. And on top of that, the evidence keeps piling up every day against Pedro Sánchez himself. Any updates? You'll have them here on Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. That's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. Thank you very much for your attention. And just a reminder, if you haven't done it yet, you can subscribe now, since we're already on our way to 150,000 subscribers. And of course, you can also become a member, as one of the chosen for less than €3 a month, or as one of the supreme members for less than €7 a month. We're going to dedicate today's show to our latest member, Tano Almela, who subscribed as one of the chosen ones. And you already know that you can also make contributions via Bizum at 627-556-370, 627-556-370. If you like the information we provide, the latest news, the most important things, well explained so that everyone can understand it, well, you can support this community, which is Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez, and of course we're also going to dedicate today's show to another one of our subscribers who has kindly made a contribution via Bizum, specifically to Ana Gallardo. Thank you very much, Ana Gallardo, for your contribution. The most important thing, as I always tell you, is that this information reaches everyone because information is power. See you soon.